Corrective exercise and stretching are great ways to improve mobility for our patients. But what do you do when you want to get to that phase where you load them and you're really trying to build strength? Can you improve mobility while in a heavy strength phase? The answer ultimately depends, as you already know. That's the answer in most physical therapy cases, but it really does depend. It depends if we follow these four principles that we're going to discuss. When we follow these four principles, we can actually start to load our patients in an intense way, but also still maintain and or improve their mobility. How do we do it? We just need to be strategic. We need to think. Take a moment and really understand, compare and contrast what types of exercises are going to be best. So let's discuss 4 ways and 4 key principles to improving your patient's mobility. The first principle that we want to consider to make sure we can improve and or maintain mobility is that we want to be thinking unilateral over bilateral. In general, unilateral is going to allow us to maintain that mobility compared to a bilateral exercise. For example, if we take a safety bar squat versus a rear foot elevated split squat, the safety bar squat is going to increase compression anterior to posterior as well as medial to lateral. So we're going to have all this compression, not to mention the load from the bar that's directly compressing the body. Now compare that to the rear foot elevated split squat. We're in a split stance position, which means that one side is being compressed while the other is being expanded. This is going to allow the body to turn. And that slight turn is going to help maintain more of an open and expanded position. So go ahead, load the legs in an intense way, but if you're looking to improve mobility, the unilateral will be better compared to the bilateral. The second programming principle we want to consider is choosing rotational-based exercises. So I'm going to write down rotation. An easy way that we can start to think of this in the gym or the clinic is a sit-up versus a high-to-low cable chop. Both are working the abs. One is compressing the body in all sorts of ways, while the other allows the body to rotate. The sit-up, right, is the compressive-based exercise and may be good at some point in time, but not if we're trying to improve mobility. Instead, go for the cable chop. The cable chop not only allows the spine to rotate, but doing it in a half kneeling position also allows rotation at the pelvis. So we have the setup that they're in just for the exercise to improve and maintain mobility, but then also the execution of the exercise then directly improves and maintains mobility. So something when it comes to abs, we're thinking rotational based compared to something that just kind of stays in one plane of movement. The third programming principle we want to consider is respiration. Now, when it comes to respiration, we ultimately have exhalation and inhalation. Exhalation is really synonymous with power and force and concentric and tight. Conversely, inhalation is synonymous with space, mobility, expansion. So if we think of a side plank, if we focus on the inhale versus the exhale, we're going to drive 2 different outcomes. An exhalation-driven side plank is probably going to feel the abs a ton, but it's going to just compress, and the patient's probably going to panic. They're going to start holding their breath. Everything is going to compress, and it's going to make them more stiff. In comparison, the inhalation and really focusing on that during a side plank will help to promote pump handle and chest expansion, to promote upper back expansion. So that way you can start to side plank and start to see mobility gains as well as that person feeling their abs. The final programming principle to improve mobility is being really intentional with the setup. A lot of us overlook this and think that the way that we have people hold weights doesn't correlate to their outcomes, when in actuality, it really does. For example, a rear foot elevated split squat with an ipsilateral load versus contralateral load are going to bias two different outcomes. The ipsilateral load is going to promote and bias external rotation. It decreases the amount that we turn, and it's going to keep that side that you're working more open and expansive. Conversely, a contralateral load is going to turn the body more, and that turn is going to start to drive internal rotation biased mechanics. So if you are working with a patient that really lacks internal rotation, then loading them with a rear foot elevated split squat with a contralateral load will help you drive those mechanics. That's how we get really intentional with our setup. So these are the 4 keys to programming when it comes to improving mobility. What I want you to take away from this is that the exercises we mentioned and the pros and the cons, they're not always pros and cons. It's always dependent on the goal you're looking for. And so we always want to make sure that our exercise aligns with our intent. For example, there may be times when a safety bar squat is a better option compared to the rear foot elevated split squat. It always just depends. So remember that going forward, and to not get caught up in the specific exercises, but really learn the principles. When you understand the principles, you can get creative as to which exercise will be best for your patient.